You must show passion. Show passion. Not me, you fool.
Yeah.
Now go, make love. All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for podcast
number 34.
Yeah.
Whoa, number 34 already.
Yep.
Doing this for so long.
And guys, this is going to be quite the passionate of podcasts.
That's right.
The most
importance
passionate.
of passion, not just in stories.
Yes, in particular, passion in and of itself and why it's important in all those ramifications.
Yeah.
This might go on for a little bit longer, but we shall see. First off, we have to shout out
to our very passionate VIP patron, the Meme Lord.
Yes, so Joe Mabe, as he's
Yeah.
known on the Discord, and this guy has been supporting us for quite a long time.
Yes.
Despite going on numerous trips, like out of the country and stuff.
Yep.
He's an incredible guy. Thank you so much.
You're
for your
amazing.
support, Joe.
Thank
You're
you
awesome.
so much. Yeah. What more is to be said?
Exactly. All right, guys. So the importance of passion. In particular, passion is something that's very near and dear to us.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you've seen us, like, watch stuff, you know that we love stories and stuff. But the thing is that passion, like, we've harped a lot about how important it is to have passionate characters, like MCs with strong Ys and things like that. But it goes... The reason we say that, is because it goes beyond that.
Right. When you have a story, you're essentially imbibing the story. You're ingesting it. So whenever you're perceiving these characters go through their stuff or what have you, you kind of want that character that you can appreciate, like something that you can gain something from. You can essentially take some aspect of what you're perceiving / kind of receiving from the story and apply it into your own life in some way.
Right. Because a lot of the time, like, okay, why do we go to stories, right? We go to stories because we want, in some form or other, we want an escape from our everyday lives. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
Because the doldrums of the everyday, you know, life gets monotonous and things like that, and sometimes we need to pick up, you know, or whatever. And stories are a way for us to have that happen. That's why having passion in stories, in behind stories, can be so important. Because we want to feel that. We love it when we're passionate about something in real life, and if it's something where it's, you know, fictional, that works too.
Right.
So that's why it's so important. Because if the passion isn't in there, then the person isn't going to feel the passion, and then they might end up going to some other story.
Exactly.
Where they can get that hit.
And that's where we want to talk about our first point in particular, and that is that passion is something that's fleeting. And even though it is fleeting, there's a lot of good reasons to be passionate. So we're going to talk about how to conjure up passion, how to remain passionate, and then why any of all that is actually important within the context of just passion itself, and maybe some bit of our personal lives that we can share some things with you in particular. So in my opinion, the best way to conjure up passion is to surround yourself in a passionate environment with passionate people. Now, the crazy thing about stories is that you can trick the system.
Right.
You can essentially put yourself into a passionate environment by watching a show with passionate characters.
Right. Even though that reality does not actually exist, you are going into your own mind pictures, right?
Exactly.
And getting your environment of passion there, because environment is stronger than willpower, as much as we like hate to admit it. Eventually, you will adapt to whatever environment you place yourself in, because either otherwise you would change the environment if it was not to your liking, or you would move to a different one. Hence stories. So yeah, it's basically just surround yourself with passionate people or things that you're passionate about. That's how you do it, you know.
Right. And one of the big things to separate this here is you can be passionate about something without the thing itself being connected to passion itself. So this is the thing where we want to separate, though, is that you don't want to just have that. You don't want to just have the thing that you're passionate about, you know, be the thing that you're engaged with. I do this all the time with Ultimate Frisbee. I am very passionate about Ultimate Frisbee, so I play a minimum 4 times a week. That is just what I do. It keeps my access to passion very easy. It's very easy for me to essentially conjure up that passion. But when I'm outside of a Frisbee environment in particular, I need the other things in my environment, or the other people in my environment, to be conjuring up their own passion via their own means. So if I'm just getting passion via what I've got, I'm going to go through this topsy-turvy, like, oh, passionate, and then no passion, and unpassionate, and then no passion. And that's actually sometimes worse than just, you know, having no passion.
Because, okay, this kind of ties into the whole next thing we're talking about, but the idea that passion is not just a feeling.
Yes.
A lot of times people will talk about passion as like a means of like motivation and stuff, as a motivator and everything. But there's differences. So because you can not feel passionate about something at any one moment, but there can still be that passion that lurks deep down inside you, right?
Right. And that's we're gonna talk about that in the next one. That's a great connective tissue there. But the main thing I've heard a lot of people talk about, in just not necessarily asking me, just in their own lives and stuff, is how do you stay passionate? How do you take that conjured up passion? You know, you go on the Nen thing and you go down to conjuration and you access passion. You click it. No, it's not that simple. You don't just bring it up, because that sort of thing doesn't sustain itself.
Right.
So one of the things that I feel like is very necessary for this is you can receive tons of stimulus to engage your passion, but unless you are actively expressing your passion in a way, you will not remain passionate. Now, this is the weird thing, is people saying like, I don't have something to be passionate about, so how can I stay passionate? They think it's like a chicken and an egg scenario. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And it kind of can be, but
it's also not.
Right. Because for me, whenever I love stories, I'm very passionate about stories, and a lot of times stories will get me excited to write, because I don't just want to consume stories and analyze stories. I want to make stories.
Right. But if you just thought about it,
but if I just thought about it,
you wouldn't be able to maintain it.
I wouldn't be able to maintain it. It would end up burning out. I would basically be giving myself the endorphin rush of surrounding myself with the thing that gives me that immediate stimulus, right?
Right.
Without doubling down on it and making it be something that's long lasting.
Right.
So I might freak out when I watch some show that's new and it's amazing and be like, oh my gosh, that gives me so many story ideas, and then the wheels in my mind are turning for weeks and weeks and weeks as I'm thinking of ways that this specific thing could be used in a story. But if I don't actually put that into practice and start working on that deeper, more slow burn passion of my own, it'll end up just being this empty thing that I go to. And actually, it'll end up killing the original passion I have, because then I might end up building this feedback system where I know this is the thing that I tell myself that I'm passionate about, that say I want to do with my life and things like that, but I don't actually go towards it. And in fact, I end up becoming kind of scared of it.
That's so true. Yeah,
I don't actually take action.
Right, and that's the thing. Passion is an active force. It is not something that, as I like to describe that, Jacob and I sometimes have this, is we'll sometimes brew and rumble like a volcano, and we'll have that activity underneath the surface. But until we erupt, essentially, we're not actually being passionate. And this is something that I think is very easy, and this was a great segue into the next bit there, but I want to just boil this down really quick. Why be passionate is because the world needs more passionate people. Yes. And I don't want to get all like sappy here or whatever, but one of the best ways actually to stay passionate is to be passionate, because what ends up happening is the feedback system you were talking about actually helps other people become passionate, and then they end up stirring you on with their passion that they received from your passion that you might have gotten from just watching a Haikyuu episode one day. There's a cyclical nature to this, so it all can suddenly come to a grinding halt sometimes. But this is why it moves its way into your identity and changes a lot of the ways you think, feel, do things in life. And we'll get into that, but we need to talk about that thing as a motivator.
But I mean, really, think about it for a second. The idea, for me especially, the idea of like staying and like the monotony of life, I can't stand that idea. And what's that quote? People everywhere live lives of quiet desperation. That is why passion is so important. Because when people see you and that you found something that makes you come alive, that helps them. It breathes life into them. It is because
they don't have to care about what you're passionate about.
They don't need to care about that. They just see that you care about that, and they're like, man, I want that.
Right.
Even if it's not caring about that same thing. Dang it, what are those things that I really care about?
Yeah. So and that's why you should be passionate.
Yep.
This is the thing though. Everyone's at a different place though. So there's no urgency to get to, there's no like levels or whatever.
Right.
It's your own internal meter and stuff like that. But this is the thing that we need to talk about though, is passion is kind of a motivator and it's a motivation in some ways, but there are some differences between the two. A lot of times passion looks like just the fuel that keeps you going. But a lot of times, passion is actually the goal. Passion is the modus operandi that's saying, like, all right, this is where I'm going. I am moving towards a more passionate lifestyle, essentially. And passion has a whole wide range of descriptions and definitions and all that. But we're looking at it more along the lines of, is it the goal or is it the fuel? And what's kind of the difference in order to tap into both of them? There's
a quote, it's like Aristotle or Socrates or someone like that said, basically follow your bliss. Right. And a lot of times, and when they used the word bliss, they didn't mean that thing that makes you happy in the moment right now. That could be
cookies for
cookies all or whatever. But the idea that when you think about it, it gives you this deep sense of satisfaction of like, this is why I exist.
Satisfaction is such an underrated word. One of the things that we've made jokes about, and we're going to bring up Haikyuu a lot in this podcast, particularly because of the integral nature of passion in that story.
Right. That's why we loved episode 3 of season 2 so much.
Yeah, exactly. But we call Hinata often a yandere for volleyball. But the reason why he has that almost sadistic romantic obsession with volleyball is because it gives him the deepest satisfaction to be on the field or on the court, as you will. Right. I get that when I do Ultimate Frisbee or when I'm watching or reading a good story. Mm-hmm. You get that same thing with a lot of other things as well when you're reading or writing. Yeah, exactly. Yep. And when you allow your life to essentially have that as a priority, and when we talk about deep satisfaction, it goes beyond likes and stuff like that, or things. It goes into what is that thing that you're deeply satisfied by. And yes, it can be cookies. I'm not trying to make light of what people are passionate about because everyone's going to have something different. Right. But there's a difference between using that as a motivator. So being like, I am going to write. I'm going to put a plate of cookies next to me, and every time I feel like I'm losing my passion, I'm going to eat a cookie, and that'll boost me up.
Sure, or every time I reach a writing goal, write a 500 words or something, I'm going to eat a cookie. That way I keep going.
Right, but there's also something I've seen people do, say when they're going on like a diet in particular.
Oh, yeah.
Is you use the cookies, essentially. I'm just using cookies as a metaphor here, to be like, I just go through this slog of hellish work or what have you in order to get to cookie day. And once I get to cookie day, then I can make it to the next cookie day. And there's a very big difference there because
even though
one is not in the present, and the other one is in the future.
Right. It's the idea because
one is in the present.
Even with those two examples, they might seem like exactly the same thing. Like using a cookie as motivation to write 500 more words, or using a cookie to finish your diet. Right. Mm-hmm. But the idea is that there's a big difference between having something that you are passionate about and seeking just the passion in and of itself.
Yes.
Right, versus seeking something that remains,
right,
that doesn't really go away, and letting your passion be the guiding compass for that thing, right, as opposed to an end in and of itself.
Right. You can start off with having passion be the end in and of itself, but you don't want to remain there. I would say that in some ways the pursuit of passion, and that sounds kind of poetic, it might actually be a little bit of a trap. If you go after the nebulous thing, you won't necessarily know when you have it. But if you make that be the fuel towards goals, you will end up kind of breathing passion versus kind of having those big intakes of passion.
Because the excitement over whatever you're passionate about, that ebbs and flows, right?
Yep.
But so that
passion is not excitement.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that's why you want to do your best to make it so that in the highs and the lows, you steady Eddie through it.
Right. And that oftentimes is tough.
Yeah.
But those things that you kind of attribute passion as, like, these are the lesser forms of passion that are still really good, kind of like joy, excitement, kind of, I would say satisfaction is probably the closest thing to passion in a way.
And a lot of times, like, people will use different words for different things. So, like, I've heard people talk about joy as, like, the thing versus satisfaction or happiness or whatever.
Right. But this is the next thing I want to talk about, is kind of the difference between what we're talking about in this context as passion versus all the other kind of lookalikes, if you will.
Right. Yeah.
So we can go after all these things, but I think the goal and why we would say the importance of passion is we want to move it from being a thing that you express or a thing that you go after or a thing that's like an end goal to basically an identity thing. So it's the difference between expressing passion versus being passionate. So
right, embodying it.
Absolutely. So and a lot of these other things like satisfaction, joy, excitement, hype, all that other stuff, those, I believe passion is a very emotional thing, but I think there's often times that we'll relegate those, and sometimes passion, just to an emotional thing, rather than being a state, like an actual state of being.
Or a decision, or
yes,
a mindset, whatever. There's something that goes beyond the simple endorphin rushes, because endorphin rushes can be dominated by like what you ate last night or whatever.
Yes, that's so true.
They can be swayed by the strangest.
You can start off a passionate day with 3 cups of coffee at the same time.
You'll feel pretty good. Interesting. Anyway,
just let me know how you're doing 2 days later, or like 16 hours later or something.
So. If that makes sense what we're saying. Like we're using a lot of like nebulous terms and everything, but it's the idea that, and this does tie back to stories, right? But that deep sense of fulfillment, that is
right. That's if you're able to identify what that is, you should be able to find your passion relatively smoothly. Right. It'll take time probably if you haven't found it yet, but you do have the ability to. There's a couple kind of life things that we wanted to bring up here, like certain kind of experiences that have kind of shaped our understanding of passion in particular. I'll go first if you want.
No, I can. I actually am just fine going first. So, a lot of you who know me may have heard me mention these fictional guys a lot of the time. But yeah, you know what I'm about to talk about. But the Mandalorians from Star Wars, right? Yep. They're basically space samurai. Yep. And I just think they're the coolest. Armor. Yeah, with armor, because you gotta have armor. I mean, come on. And you might be thinking like, okay, yeah, Jacob likes to talk about this a lot. No, but there's a deeper reason behind it. Because it's not just the idea that, they're badass warriors, because literally every story has those. Just some cookie cutter stand-in for that. But it's the idea that they take that thing, they find that thing in life that gives them that deep sense of fulfillment, and they go after it like a dog on a hunt. They do not stop, and they do those hard things that no one else is willing to do in order to achieve that greater goal, that goal that's beyond themselves, right? That, I would say, is for me the biggest example of passion. And granted, it's fictional. The Mandalorians don't actually exist yet,
sort of.
But that to me was like the great example of it. A lot of times you can also see this in like the Determinators in shonen stories, right? Sure. The reason that whole trope resonates with us on some level is because we understand that a lot of it can just be tied to a mindset. Being willing to do the hard thing, training, whatever that looks like, pushing yourself to become more than yourself, to become the self that you always knew you could be and that you are. You just have to let it be realized.
Cool.
So
that's awesome.
That's,
So you didn't share any life experiences, actually?
Well, no, Mandalorians, basically.
Okay,
a lot of times in fiction, whether it's the Mandalorians, Kamina, Reagan, whatever, Broskandar.
So I'm going to share actual life experiences.
Oh, okay, okay.
In particular, during the younger years of high school, so like 14, 15, one of the things that I identified was that there are specific people who, and this will get brought up into with the idea of connection. There are certain people that know how to connect with others much better than others. Okay. And I really couldn't figure out what made them better at this. Like they had a skill that I didn't have, or this was before I really threw away a lot of my beliefs on talent. I felt like they had a talent for connecting with people and really engaging on a higher level. At this time, I've got all my social anxieties and my kind of bad version of introversion, where I just don't interact well with people and stuff. And I realized that all these people had multiple, generally, passions. And everyone essentially knew that those were their passions. And I had this really hard, long kind of look at myself, and I realized, I don't have any, identifiable passions. And it was just like, oh, that kind of sucks. And it was like, I knew what my passions were. But if I asked anyone else, they'd be like, I have no idea what you're passionate about. And so I went on this little journey, and this is something that I really think could have been the start of a YouTube channel like years and years ago. But I don't know if YouTube was even around
Back
12 years ago.
14, 15? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, what ended up happening is I had this like really crappy little like voice recorder thing, and I went around and asked elderly people. I asked elderly people like what they would tell themselves when they're my age. And I was thinking, I'm a genius. Like, no one else does this. Found out eventually when YouTube and stuff came out, like, tons of people have done this kind of thing. But what I ended up hearing was that they would say things like, follow your passions, go after your dreams. And they'd be like, don't give up. And they would have all these kind of things that they would tell themselves to do. And generally, they were all on the lines of, like, active, passionate doing. And I was like, all right, that's cool. But one of the things that the people would tell me afterwards was that just saying that might not have been enough. And I'm like, well, what would have been necessary? And a lot of them would say things along the lines of, like, I wish I had actually, like passionately gone after that thing. Whether it was a person they had a crush on, or it was
that dream job.
Yeah, the desire to be a musician. And there was oftentimes some lack of belief or some lack of something, or people that, you know, discouraged them or what have you, and they stopped because their passion basically faded out.
Right. The endorphin rush part of the passion.
Exactly. And so
out.
I was like, well, what is that thing? And I think like for like 5 years I've been trying to figure out, like from then, so like from 15 to 20, I was trying to figure out what that is. And those weren't really great times in my life. But when I think I discovered that I could have anything be my passion and that was okay, it was like freedom, just complete and total freedom for me. And I just chose Ultimate Frisbee. And I just decided, yeah, that'll be my thing. That'll be my thing. And from there, everything else basically just kind of came forward. Cool. And it was deciding something to be passionate about. It was about focusing that passion on something, because I had the ability to be passionate. I think a lot of people I've heard who have like deep love or something for someone will say like, I have all this energy, all this love, all this passion inside me, but I don't know where to direct it towards.
Sure.
And literally it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you just direct it towards something or someone, it will benefit your life.
Right. Yeah.
In the long run. In the long run. You might have some rough times in the beginning where you're still figuring it out, but you just choose something.
Yeah.
Because it makes a huge difference, and I cannot understate that. Like
Right, because
I cannot overstate that, is what I mean.
Because here's one of the other things. A lot of times, people will have the issue that I've seen where they won't know what to be passionate about.
Sure.
Or, potentially, even more, they'll be passionate about a bunch of things, and they won't choose that one thing.
They won't focus.
Right, that's one of the reasons why I say The Mandalorian was a life lesson to me, even though it was like fictional stuff, is because it's the idea of, no, focus. Actively choosing that one thing, pushing all the rest aside, and saying, this is what I'm going to be about.
Exactly.
You know, whatever is that one thing, the one thing you decide, that becomes the truth of your universe.
Yeah.
You know, that there's a reason we love that quote.
And this is all does tie back into characters and storytelling, because in particular, you'll see characters who end up kind of being caricatures of some aspect of humanity. Like, there's the Determinators and the shonen protagonists and stuff. And there's the mentor roles, and there's the kind of the love interest characters or what have you. But one of the things that all these characters who are good at their caricatures have is some measure of passion for that one or two things.
Right. And well said on the whole thing of characters being caricatures, because a lot of times, if you look at like humanity as a whole and what most people are like, and then you look at characters and characters that you would consider to be good characters, most of the time there is not a lot of matchup between characters and realistic people. Right? But rather what it is that the characters represent the best, the potential in people made real in this fictional universe.
Right.
And that's why it resonates with us so much, because again, we're going 2 stories for an escape. We're going 2 stories to get something better than reality.
Exactly.
So having those characters, like say Bros Gandar, for instance, right? just the super macho encourager type dude, right? Yep. Is that realistic as a person? No. There are probably some people out there that are like that.
But it's not
realistic.
They
are very few and far between, and they still probably aren't like that.
Right.
But that can still make for an incredibly compelling character because we realize and we recognize the passion in that character, that passion that maybe we wish we had in ourselves.
That little bit of kind of larger than life humanity.
Exactly.
It's something in there that you go, ooh, that resonates with something within me. And that's why we bring up kind of haiku so much when we talk about passion in particular, is because each character is actually a really strong caricature of some element of passion.
Yep.
And I would say that's almost the case with all of them, even Asahi in some ways. Like, he's kind of the quiet passion.
Right.
He's not necessarily the most expressive one, but they each have their thing that they're passionate about with a caricature kind of model around that.
And that's the thing. Well said. Because a lot of the times, like, okay, I used Broskandar as an example. I think Broskandar is an awesome character and stuff, and I like that example of passion a lot.
Right.
For me, I love it. But the thing is, it does not have to be that loud, brash passion, right?
Yep.
It can just be about passion in and of itself, and it'll be compelling. Asahi is a great example. He's a very passionate individual, but he might not be the most confident individual. He might approach his passion in a very timid way. Or Ancient Magus Bride, main character in there. They don't even know what they're passionate about. They don't really have passions. But their whole growth is about passion in and of itself.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Very compelling story.
Yep.
So there's no like cookie cutter way to do this, and so don't think it has to be something like that, because then ironically that'll rob the passion from it.
Right. What you do need to do is, this is a thing that I would say lots of stories need to really understand. I think in some ways there's a lot of areas where anime and live action both understand this and they both don't. Is that write characters that have that thing that they're passionate about, and that will make them a strong caricature for that thing. And then as long as they're involved with each other in the story, sparks will fly, because their passions will bounce off all over each other.
And that will help make
story will happen.
And that will help make them seem like much more like characters, and not just really good caricatures.
Exactly. It's all about blending that.
Yeah.
And we're going to tie this all back together here, is that we talked about why we enjoy consuming media with passionate characters. We talked about how passion in particular is something that's near and dear to the core of our beings because of life experiences and things we've learned and such, and how it's also a fuel that we can basically kind of hit ourselves with, and kind of get going. But I think that the really powerful thing about passion, and the most important thing about passion, is that it's something that connects people. So we are doing this whole YouTube channel thing. We are just people that are passionate about stories. That's our thing. That's what we're focusing on. The coolest thing about this is that we get to have the opportunity to connect with people who are passionate about that same thing, but also potentially have some value they gain from observing, or interacting with people that are passionate about a thing. And on the Discord in particular, I've had many conversations with awesome people on there who have completely different passions than I have. Like, way different. And we end up having this really good discourse about why, like, their passion is important to them, or like vice versa. And that is kind of the thing that I think I was looking for back when I was like 14 or 15, is that I didn't need to be a specific person, or I didn't need to have things worked out a certain way. I just needed to choose my passion and stick with it and own it. And then the people that would most naturally connect with that would just find their way into my life. And I think that's something that all of you can potentially benefit from, is that just choosing passion as being a priority in your life will help you connect with people. And I think that connection goes beyond just the kind of the making friends kind of power of friendship thing. But
it will improve your life just in general. Like,
it'll help you connect with yourself.
Yeah, it'll help you connect with yourself. Because I think the reason why passion helps people connect with each other is because, you know, the fire can't burn without fuel, right? It can't burn on its own. So that's why we seek out other people, even if they're not passionate about the same thing, but other passionate people, because that helps the flame stay alive, right? That's why it helps us connect with people. And that also is why it helps improve your life in general, because then you're always in that mindset of being connected with your passion, that deep thing in you that's like, this is my purpose. So,
but yeah, that's it, guys. That's kind of our dissertation on the importance of passion, and we might revisit this in the future. But yeah, we'd love to just know for the next podcast in particular, I kind of want to direct the questions a little bit. What are some things that you're passionate about? And you, if you're asking questions for us in the future, have them be focused around specific things that you're passionate about. And then that way we can connect with you on it, because I'd like to know what are those things for you guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're going to get into the Q&A session now.
That's right.
Let's do this. The first question comes from Eureka. And this question would be, for what is your definition of hero and heroism? Ooh. So the hero is the individual, and heroism is the hero doing heroic things. But if we want to get more into the meat of it, it's a lot of it in a way just ends up being kind of compassionate self-sacrifice in a way.
Sure.
Thinking about others before yourself.
Right, exactly.
And doing it in a compassionate way, you know, so you're not looking to gain something. It's selfless.
And a lot of the times when we think about a hero, right, it's not, that hero is still just a person, right?
Yeah.
But it's that they represent something bigger to us because of the things that they have done, right? Heroic things that they've done or whatever. And that makes them become less of just a person, like, because usually our heroes are people we haven't actually met,
right? And
then it's the ideal that they represent that they sort of show to us, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Like maybe that's more of like for me.
That's maybe a little bit more for you, but I think we've that was what the question was, is what's our definition of it. So that's good. And the follow-up question is, where's the line in courage and madness in that, especially with characters such as Izuku Midoriya?
Thank you for bringing that up.
That's a very good thing to bring up, because I think that heroes walk the fine line between courage and madness. One of the things that, in particular, I think stops many of us, just including myself, from being heroic is there's this idea that there's risk involved. When you get to the line of where being a hero or being selfless brings higher and higher risk to you, a lot of the people that look at that act go, you're mad, you're crazy, you're going to lengths that are not equal to the result that you're seeking.
Yeah, and
that is
that's passion.
Ooh, that's passion.
Because and that's why I love you brought up Deku, because that's like, you know, we talked a lot about Haikyuu, and MHA, I would say, is Haikyuu with superpowers. Like, the reason why we love MHA is the same reason that we love Haikyuu. And, like, specifically, if you're thinking, like, episode 210, right? That's the epitome of the idea of the hero, because Deku has something that he sees as being more important than himself. Right?
Even more important than winning in some ways.
And because he sees it as more important than himself, because he's so passionate about that, and because he really sees it as being more important than himself, he's willing to do things that other people look at and say, that's crazy.
That's crazy.
That's mad. Because it becomes this almost obsession where you're saying, it doesn't really matter what happens to me. This needs to happen. Right?
So My Hero Academia is a fantastic show for answering this question in the multifaceted kind of almost like worthy answer. Like, our answer is very limited in that it's kind of our definition, but everyone has their own definition, and that's something that that show does pretty well. Next question's from Little Duck. If you guys could bring any character to life, who would it be and why? Well, Iroh. That's my
Note these
answer.
Characters will still have all the powers they possessed in their own world.
Iroh. I would directly go and be like, Sensei, teach me. And I would listen to every single thing he says. Like, that I don't even have to think about this.
I think I would, just for kicks.
Oh no.
I would bring Haruhi into the
real world. God, no. You've doomed us all.
No, it would work out fine, because she's God and she doesn't want anything actually horrible to happen.
All right, well,
Life would get interesting.
Next question. Lex the Graceful Rival asks, how would you write a character that regularly breaks the fourth wall that isn't a comedic character like Deadpool?
There are a lot of ways you can do it. One is by having a narrator, and that doesn't have to be like play narrator. It can be something where the story already happened and there's someone else recounting it. But
this is the story of the day I died.
Right, exactly.
Well, actually.
Right, a lot of stories start out that way, and it can be done very well. And for like regularly breaking the fourth wall, you just
regularly it's a little bit trickier.
Yeah, I would say have to get creative with it because
I would say in particular one of the things that you can do is you make them a comedic character that's not cracking jokes. So one of the things that Jim Halpert does in The Office every once in a while is he just looks at the camera and does his
or Ben
Jim
Wyatt
Halpert
from Parks
thing.
and Rec. Yeah.
And those things there are funny. But the characters of themselves, the ones that are doing that, are actually generally the more sensible people in these shows.
Sure.
Like, if you look at them as a character, they're generally not the comedic relief. Like, in The Office...
Usually that's in response to the comic relief.
Yeah, in The Office and Parks and Recreation, those characters are kind of more of the, like, the good guy.
That just happened?
Just the regular good guy.
Yeah,
you know? They don't have... a comedic center to them as much as characters like
Deadpool,
Chris Pratt's character in Parks and Recreation.
Oh, Andy Dwyer?
Yeah, Andy Dwyer, next question, to follow it up, is from the same person. Do you think that there's a limit to how many main characters you can or should kill off at one particular moment? I'm currently writing a story, and in this story, at one point, I'm planning to kill off 3 out of the 7 main characters at the same time, almost simultaneously. Do you think something like that is too much at once? You should answer this.
Well done. And the other thing I would say is those are rookie numbers. You need to pump those numbers up. We go to stories because we want to see passion, and a lot of times passion happens when there's suffering.
Want to see death.
well, I mean, death, passion, they all, death brings about passion a lot of the time. So I would say that is absolutely not too many characters.
Right.
I would just make it so that every character that dies is remembered. So
cool.
basically, one of the things that I would think would be horrible to happen is if 3 characters die at the same time and 2 of them are grieved, but then the other one is sort of like, oh, who is that again? Like,
Yeah. So just give them all the fair treatment in that.
And potentially make it not like the tragic death where it happens slowly and it's poignant or whatever, but maybe just...
make it harsh, abrupt,
brutal.
The next final follow-up question from Lex the Graceful Rival asks, what's your opinion on magic systems that have a pseudoscientific explanation provided by the author, and are there any examples of this done well in your opinion? I think you really liked the magic in that one book series that I haven't read yet.
Yeah, the King Killer Chronicles is really good at that. Brandon Sanderson, basically all of his stuff is really good at that. I just started reading Mistborn, which does have a good sort of pseudo-scientific explanation for it.
Gotcha.
But King Killer Chronicles, first one is Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss.
It's good.
They do a really good job with it. But yeah,
good stuff. Annie asks, it's AHNY. So, New York.
How can you make a tragic backstory for a side character without making it feel forced?
I'm taking this one. Right. So, one of the things with side characters with tragic backstories in particular is the amount of time in which they're presented. One of the things that side characters often do is they abruptly, just all of a sudden, tell you the most compact tragic backstory. And the main reason they do that is because they're a side character.
Oh,
the thing with side characters, they don't have as much screen time, so they have to give that backstory in there. Make it vague. Don't give everything all at once.
Sure.
Have it be a thing where the side character kind of laments about, seeing maybe someone else has something that's similar to their backstory, and they kind of have this forlorn look, and you're like, wait, what's that? I think this is easier to do with one of the main side characters. This is not easy to do with a side, like a tertiary side character.
Yeah.
In general, those people shouldn't get tragic backstories.
Right, because it would take too long to do it justice.
Right. Yeah. In particular, I think that Azula is actually a great example from Avatar of having a tragic backstory that isn't dumped on you all at once.
Sure.
You get the vibe that there's a very messed up home situation actually because
Of
she has a
Zuko,
brother, so
who
you
is
can
more of a main character.
right. So you can actually use a main character's story to infer the tragic backstory of the side character, and generally all the side characters are connected to a main character in some way. So there you go.
Yeah, Azula is a very clever way to do it. If you want a one that is dumped on, but it's still done well, I would say is Mikasa from Attack on Titan, because it is something that very much shaped her life.
Sure.
So it's not just brushed away and being like, oh, there's a tragic backstory, but moving on. You know?
Yeah. I think that's a good one. It's, if anything, in Attack on Titan, Mikasa is somewhat of a caricature in some ways. So it's not communicated as well, just in my opinion, also because Mikasa is not technically a side character.
Sure.
So
that's a good point. Side character. Yep.
Next question is from Charles Coco. If you wanted to make some voice acting, what is the type of anime character you would enjoy the most and be good at the most? I would really enjoy to play a crazy person. I really enjoy kind of making kind of voice impressions of all the very crazy people out there. Yes, precious. Or just the characters that have like kind of a whimsical voice to them. You know. I really do enjoy the idea of getting into voice acting. I know it's way harder than it sounds, so it's where would I find the time to put that in, and would I make it a priority over something like Ultimate Frisbee? Maybe if I switched Ultimate Frisbee for voice acting and for some reason I got more passionate about that, that's maybe how I would get into it. But anyways, that's not really the question. What about for you?
I would want to do some kind of character that basically is very much an encourager type character, and not in the passive encourager type character, but more the bolstering, like active encourager,
like a really good Boromir that didn't fall because of the ring's influence.
Exactly. Like when I make stories that like there will probably be at least like one character in there that more or less like could be, you know, described as being that encourager type, just because I think that's very important. It's been important for me in my life when there are characters like that. So
Wiley Coyote asks, one, I'm an MHA anime only like you guys, and I was wondering what you would think of the introduction of international conflict in MHA. Love it. Love the idea.
Want to take this one?
Yeah. I've been excited just out the wazoo about the idea of essentially moving outside of Japan. Because if Deku's going to become the greatest superhero of all time, there are superheroes outside of Japan.
Right.
Now, I know that this is an anime, so let's focus on Japan. Let's get that stuff going down. But what if the villains went global? What if, you know, the conflict as a whole tried to connect all the villains? What if, you know, we had multiple factions out there that started basically competing for like we know this is coming at some point. One point, All Might is going to make his exit from the hero kind of scene of things. What do all the villains outside of Japan do? Do they care? Do they even does All Might is even a blip on their radar? Yep. Who knows? So really excited for that.
Dobby, what do you think of getting rid of a main character for the sake of developing others?
Ooh, you do that.
There was a specific example in here, but but spoilers.
It's funny how I know like exactly what it is, because you know.
That must never be spoiled for anybody.
Yeah, I had it spoiled for me, guys.
But okay, getting rid of the main character should always be a big deal, right?
It says getting rid of a main character.
Yeah, so it's a main character. Yeah. It doesn't have to be the main character. That's actually very tough to do.
Very tough to do.
But for the sake of developing others, so deaths of characters should develop other characters.
Yeah.
Like, even more so the more of a main character they are. Right.
So that's almost a given.
Right, because here's the thing. And I think that's the real main focus for this, is that that should be something that happens. Yes. Right? Regardless.
Right. So that doesn't mean it was done for the sake of developing the characters.
No, that doesn't mean it's done for the sake of developing the characters. But the thing is that, in my mind, there shouldn't really be much of a distinction.
Yes.
So
well said.
You have some character that's like this awesome character, right, that dies, and because of that, right, it affects people because there were people that knew and cared for them, loved them, and all that stuff, right? And that is going to cause them to change because there is now a hole, a gaping hole, right? So embrace that.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that. That's something that will naturally happen. The thing that I think you're talking about is where the character didn't really have much purpose moving forward in the story if they don't die now.
Yep.
that you should try to avoid.
Right.
It
That
will
you
make
can
the
do by
death
just
seem
making-
even. It will make the death seem worse.
Right.
Right. Because
That
then
you-
you're losing something.
Yeah, that you can do by just making them be a halfway decent character, to be honest.
Right.
There's a lot of times you end up finding out your character is pretty hollow if when they die, people only see it as being a death for the purpose of developing someone else.
Right.
And
there will probably always be people who see that if you do the whole developing another character after the death properly.
But generally, those are a little bit more split in
Right.
the viewing
Exactly.
there. Next question's from Janie. Asks, how do stories with large-scale conflicts like war make the personal conflicts of the characters still feel important? Okay,
Ooh.
I think this is a great question, but I think the question is more along the mechanics of how do you get into the mechanics of doing that, because the easy answer is you just focus on the characters, and I don't think that's what
Right.
you're looking for here. They're looking for more of a mechanics
or
based
why.
answer.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's like how. It's a how question. So, like, you have a large-scale conflict in Avatar: The Last Airbender with war. The personal conflicts of the characters are way more important than the overarching story, because we are following these characters, and it's more about their story than it is the world story. And this
Right.
is something I think very few things actually make the large-scale conflict bigger than the characters' conflict. In actuality, some of the ways that they do that right end up actually because they went so far into the large-scale conflict that it became this almost theatrical kind of like momentous thing, kind of like Lord of the Rings. But Lord of the Rings has the story of Frodo and Sam.
Right, exactly.
And just those
The
two
fellowship.
eclipse all the conflict
Right.
of the world and what have you. So it's how far are you willing to zoom in on your characters? If you're not willing to, then this problem comes up. But almost always this problem won't come up.
Because usually the reason that people use large-scale conflicts like this, other than just to have the gravitas and the plot of the story, is as a contrast with the intimate moments with the characters.
Yes.
Right?
Well said.
And those can be powerful.
Or even just the intimate conflicts, the one-on-one conflicts.
Yep.
It's one of the easiest ways I've seen a lot of stories that don't have good characters do this, is they'll literally just have like a war going on and then suddenly a duel. You know, like something as basic as that actually does. Because here's the thing. If you have a large-scale conflict, like war in particular, people aren't going to identify with a side necessarily if there aren't characters individually focused on that side. And I think that's why this conflict, this idea of large-scale conflict making personal conflicts less important, almost never happens. If anything, what ends up happening is the personal conflicts just aren't given almost any attention, and therefore the personal stuff just feels less compared to this grand conflict going on. So, if anything, just focus on the characters, but there's some mechanical ideas for you.
So, Bilgewater Blues asks, what one episode of any series you've reacted to thus far did each of you find the hardest to edit, and what made it so difficult?
Oh, no, you go first.
You've got an easy answer.
Well, I do have an easy answer, but I don't want to talk about it yet.
Okay, so for me, this one was actually kind of surprising, but Konosuba. Konosuba, okay, now, comedy is actually one of the ones that I find the hardest, because whenever you're dealing with drama, it's very easy to clip around the unnecessary parts, right?
Yeah.
Because there will be a lot of times where they'll sum up what they said or things like that, and you can just skim off the fat, right?
Yeah.
And it's actually really easy. It might take a little bit of time, but you always know what needs to go.
Right.
With comedy, it's a lot tougher because the jokes will build off of each other, so there will be one joke that will be really funny, and you need the 1, 2, 3 steps, that make that joke work. But then, when that joke is referenced later, you also need them to know all those 1, 2, 3 steps so that they understand it in that next segment. So it was really tough. And usually what I would end up doing is I would actually just end up like choosing between babies of like which joke I just remove from the edit, because I can't.
That's smart.
I can't do it partially.
That's smart, because in a lot of ways, Konosuba is a sitcom.
Right.
And
they handle their jokes very well.
Right, but that in that way, each sit, you can just kind of be like, and that's out entirely, because it's just the weakest of the jokes, maybe.
Right.
Mine is, yes, it's a very easy answer. But mine is Made in Abyss, episode 13, because so many reasons. Okay, let me break this.
It was also double length.
It was, Yes, Jacob. But we've done Game of Thrones, which was like an hour and 15 minutes cut down to 10 minutes. That was insane.
Yeah.
And actually, this was harder than that. Because here's the thing. When you watch Made in Abyss, episode 13, no spoilers, don't worry. I won't go into specific details, but there's going to be some light kind of thematic spoilers thrown around in here. There's scenes in that you have to watch over and over again. Over and over and over and over again. And I had to watch episode 13, probably in reality, specific parts, parts, about 7 times, I would say, in a row. I had to take breaks.
He would come out and be outside, like,
and I'm like, just, broken.
Johan face,
just dead inside. And Jacob's like, are you okay? I'm like, oh, no. And the amount of time...
I would point and laugh.
Ha ha ha. Yeah. The amount of time I think I spent editing that episode was about 2.5 times the length of editing something like a really tough a really tough MHA episode maybe. So if I take about 45 minutes to edit an MHA episode, this took about 2 hours. Yeah, and not including breaks, in there. So yeah, that was rough. That was rough. And no spoilers, but if you haven't seen Made in Abyss, what are you doing with your life? If you have just a friend with an Amazon account, you can watch it all.
Yep.
It's included with that. They don't have it behind a paywall with Amazon Strike anymore. So
that's all gone, thankfully. Last question from Freya K. Do you have any tattoos or plans for tattoos in the future?
No, we do not have tattoos, and as of now, no, we don't have plans for tattoos in the future. Yeah, just not a thing for that. All right, guys. Well, thanks for your questions.
Yes.
Leave us your questions in the comments if you want us to answer them in the next podcast. Yep. And we'll see you there. Check out links in the description for a whole bunch of stuff, and we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.